She laughed from her car window as the tires crushed another line of my corn. "This isn't your property, Mark." "It's community land," she yelled, her voice cutting through the quiet evening like a siren. I stood at the edge of my fence, fists clenched, watching her SUV slice through months of my hard work. The dust cloud behind her car rose like smoke after a fire. I wanted to yell, but I didn't. I just stood there, quiet, because I knew something she didn't. 2 weeks ago, she had moved into the house across the road and started calling herself the HOA Enforcement Chair. Funny thing, we don't even have an HOA. She printed fake notices, stuck them on my gate, and threatened to fine me for having a tractor parked near my barn. Yesterday she went too far. She drove over the boundary line, right through my irrigation ditch, and almost hit my dog. When I told her to stop trespassing, she smirked. "You'll regret this, farmer boy. I make the rules here." That night, as I sat on my porch, my daughter Emma asked, "Dad, why is that lady so mean?" I didn't have an answer. I just looked at the half-flattened crop swaying in the wind. It wasn't about money anymore. It was about respect, about someone thinking they could walk or drive over me and get away with it. So the next morning, I got up before sunrise, grabbed my shovel, and started digging near the back edge of the field, right where she loved to speed through. The soil was soft after the rain, perfect for what I had in mind. A few planks, a layer of leaves, and a bit of muddy water later, it looked like normal ground. My old dog Scout just sat nearby, wagging his tail like he knew this wasn't farming. It was justice. By afternoon, the sky turned gray again, the kind of day that makes the air heavy and quiet. And right on time, I heard her engine, that familiar growl. Her silver SUV rolled in fast, cutting across the fence line like always. But this time there was a sound, a deep, wet thunk, then the screech of tires spinning. Mud splashed high, coating the sides of her car. She slammed the horn and screamed, "You idiot! Get me out of here!" I walked over slowly, hands in my pockets, keeping my face calm even though my heart was racing. "You shouldn't be on my land, Karen," I said softly. She looked at me through the window, eyes wide and furious. "I'll call the police." "You trapped me." I smiled just a little. "Good," I said. "Make sure they bring the county records with them." Because what she didn't know was that the land she kept claiming as community property was legally mine, registered, surveyed, and signed off by someone she should have never messed with. Within 15 minutes, 2 sheriff cars pulled up, lights flashing across the muddy field. Karen jumped out of her half-sunk SUV, waving her arms like she'd just survived a war. "Officer, arrest him. He dug a hole to trap me. He tried to kill me," she screamed, pointing at me as mud dripped from her heels. I stayed quiet, leaning on my shovel. The deputy looked at me first, then at the ground, then back at her. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "you're about 40 feet inside this man's property line." Her face turned red instantly. "No, this whole section belongs to the HOA. I'm the acting head," she snapped. The younger officer exchanged a look with his partner, one of those silent looks that said, "We've got another one." "Ma'am, this county doesn't have an HOA registered for this zone," he replied. "We checked last month after your last complaint." Her voice cracked. "That's not true. He doesn't even own this land." I finally spoke calm and steady. "Actually," I said, pulling a folded document from my jacket pocket, "I've owned it for 7 years. Signed and sealed by County Judge Harold Decker." The older deputy took the paper, scanned it, and nodded. "Yep, that's the county seal. It's legit." He turned back to her. "Ma'am, you're trespassing. You also caused property damage." She stuttered, stepping back. No, I didn't mean to. He put that trap there." I looked her dead in the eye. "After you drove through my field 3 times and threatened to fine me?" "Yeah, I made sure you couldn't do it again." The crowd had started to gather by now, neighbors, phones in hand, recording everything. Someone whispered, "That's her. The crazy HOA lady who tore up Mrs. Dalton's garden." Karen's breathing grew shallow as people murmured around her. But just when I thought it was over, she shouted something that made everyone freeze. "You think you're smart, huh? Let's see what your boss thinks about this." She smirked, pulling out her phone. "I know people in the county office. You'll lose this land before the week's over." The deputy looked at me uneasy now. "You got someone high up mad at you?" I gave a half smile and shook my head. "Not exactly. but she's about to find out who I used to work for. The whole place went silent for a second. Even the wind seemed to stop. I pulled out my old badge from my back pocket, the one I'd kept hidden since retirement. The gold still shone through the years of wear. "Former Federal Land Survey investigator," I said quietly. "And I helped map this entire county." Karen's phone slipped from her hand, landing right in the mud. Her mouth fell open as the badge glinted in the gray light. The deputies froze, exchanging looks they couldn't hide. Karen took a shaky step back, her heels sinking deeper in the mud. "You're lying," she stammered. "That's fake. You're pretending to be—" The older deputy cut her off. "Ma'am, that's a real badge. I've seen those before. These are federal issued." Her face drained of color. "This can't be happening," she whispered. "You're just some farmer." I took a slow breath, my voice steady. Yeah, that's what I wanted to be after 30. Years of chasing property fraud. And land scams. Just a quiet farmer. But people like you drag that piece right back into the dirt. The crowd murmured again. Phones were up everywhere now, recording every word, every breath. Karen looked around, realizing her every twitch was going viral. "Stop recording me," she shouted. "I'll sue all of you," someone in the back yelled. "Good luck suing the internet." The laughter that followed broke her last bit of control. She screamed and started pulling at her car door, trying to free it, but the back tires were buried deep in mud. The engine whined uselessly. The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, we'll need a tow truck. You can't move that vehicle." That's when she snapped again, turned toward me and shouted, "You did this! You think you won? I'll file a report for assault." I didn't even move. "You go ahead," I said softly. "Just make sure you mention the part where you've been trespassing for weeks, damaging property and threatening me with fake HOA fines." The younger deputy spoke up, now clearly done with her. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for harassment, vandalism, and false impersonation of an HOA official. Step away from the vehicle." She looked stunned, frozen in disbelief as the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. No, you can't do this to me. I'm respected in this neighborhood." I met her eyes, calm but cold. "Respect isn't something you demand, Karen, it's something you earn." But just as they started walking her toward the patrol car, her expression changed. A sly grin crept across her face, like she still had a secret card to play. "You think you've buried me, Mark? You have no idea who I really am." Something about the way she said it made the hair on the back of my neck rise. I frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" She leaned closer to the deputy and said under her breath, but loud enough for me to hear, "You didn't check whose name is on the land next to his, did you?" The deputy paused. "What are you talking about?" Karen smirked. "You'll find out soon. And when you do, he's the one who'll be trespassing." For the first time all day, I felt that cold sinking feeling in my gut, again because there was something she wasn't bluffing about. The rain started again, slow at first, then harder, tiny drops turning the field into a mirror of mud and reflection. The deputies loaded Karen into the patrol car, but her grin stayed. She looked out through the glass and mouthed the words, "Check your deed." That stuck in my head, even after they drove off. Lights fading down the dirt road, I stood there, staring at the field like I could see the truth written in the soil. My neighbor, old Mr. Dalton, walked up holding an umbrella. "You handled that well, son," he said, nodding toward where Karen's car had been. "She's been stirring up trouble with everyone." But what did she mean by that last part? I shrugged, trying to sound calm. Probably just another lie, but inside I wasn't sure. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, I pulled out the land files from my cabinet. Everything I'd collected since I bought the property. County maps, survey lines, title deeds. All there, clean and official. But then I noticed something. A small red stamp on the most recent county update, dated just a month ago. "Boundary under review." My stomach tightened. I hadn't filed for any review. I picked up the phone and called an old friend from my federal days, David, who still worked at the Land Commission. "Hey Dave, it's Mark, I need a favor. Can you check something for me? Someone's been messing with my property records." He groaned. "This late, Mark? You still can't let land go, huh?" "Not when someone's trying to take it," I said flatly. There was silence for a few seconds, then the sound of keys typing fast. "Wait, that's strange. Your file was accessed last week, but not by any of our office staff. It was pulled under an external authorization code, private legal access." "Private by who?" He hesitated. You're not gonna like this. The access code belongs to County Zoning Attorney Linda Parks. The name hit like a punch. Linda Parks? I repeated slowly. That's Karen's sister. David cursed under his breath. That explains it. They've been redrawing property lines on private farmland across this region. Moving markers, just a few feet each time to shift boundaries for future development claims. If they succeed, you lose a strip of your west field and she gets the legal right-of-way she's been pretending to have. My hand clenched around the phone. Not happening, I said. Careful, Mark, David warned. If she's working with county-level signatures. This goes deeper than one angry neighbor. I looked out the window toward the dark field. The mud trap was still there, half filled with rainwater, like a warning written by nature itself. Then I guess it's time, I muttered, to remind them whose land this really is. Because if Karen and her sister wanted a land war, they'd just picked the wrong veteran to fight it with. The next morning, the air felt heavier than usual, like the whole sky was holding its breath. I brewed a pot of coffee, opened my laptop, and began digging through the county's land registry portal. Every document, every survey, every timestamp. And there it was, the change request, signed digitally by Attorney Linda Parks. The form looked legit, but one thing stood out. The signature date was on a Sunday. The county office doesn't operate on Sundays. That was all I needed. I downloaded the file, cross-referenced the property grid with the original satellite, maps from my federal archives, and found the difference, exactly 12.4 feet shaved off the west boundary. Just enough for Karen's driveway to legally sit inside my crops and smart, sneaky, illegal. By noon, I was sitting in my truck, parked outside the county administration building. The sky was still gray, and the American flag above the door waved like it was watching a silent showdown. Inside, the receptionist recognized me instantly. Mr. Collins, she said carefully, I heard about what happened with that HOA lady. How can I help you? I need to speak with a zoning attorney, I said. She hesitated. Ms. Parks is in a meeting. Then she can meet me in there, I interrupted. My tone left no room for debate. Minutes later, I pushed open the glass door to the conference room. Linda Parks sat at the far end of the table, her suit crisp, her hair perfectly pinned, the same cold smirk as her sister. Ah, she said, setting down her pen. Mr. Collins, I was expecting you. Were you? I asked, sliding the folder across the table. Then you already know what this is. She opened it, glanced inside, and closed it without even pretending to be surprised. Boundary revisions. Everything was done by the book. By the book? I leaned forward. You forged a Sunday authorization code. You used your office to alter federal maps. That's not by the book, that's fraud. Her smile didn't even flicker. You're retired. Mr. Collins, maybe let the professionals handle the paperwork now. I laughed softly. That's the thing about retirement. Ms. Parks, it doesn't erase my clearance. Her smirk faltered. Clearance? I slid my ID across the table, my federal clearance pass, still valid for map access through the Department of Land Integrity. Every file you changed is already logged in the federal database. Every signature, every timestamp, every false coordinate. You didn't just commit local fraud. You interfered with federal property data. Her face went pale. You think your sister was the problem? I continued. You're the real Karen here. She was just the loud one. You're the dangerous one. She stood quickly, trying to grab her phone, but the door opened before she could move. 2 federal agents stepped in, badges flashing. Linda Parks, one of them said, You're under arrest for falsification of land documents and misuse of county access codes. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked at me like she couldn't believe this was happening. You set me up, she hissed. I shook my head slowly. No, ma'am. You set yourself up the day you decided to mess with the man who used to write the land you're standing on. As the agents let her out, I stepped outside, breathing in the cold air. For the first time in weeks, the sky began to clear. The sunlight hit my muddy boots, warm and golden, like the land itself was exhaling. When I got back home, Emma was waiting on the porch. Dad, she said softly, is the bad lady gone? I smiled and knelt beside her. Yeah, sweetheart. Both of them. She grinned. So, no more people driving through our corn? I chuckled, brushing her hair aside. No more people driving through our corn. I looked out over the field, our land. Our peace, and whispered the line that had been sitting on my tongue since the day it started. I didn't fight for this country to let anyone tell me where my land ends. A week later, the fields were finally quiet again. No engines roaring, no fake notices taped to the fence, just the soft hum of crickets, and the wind brushing through, the corn that had survived the chaos. I'd rebuilt most of what Karen destroyed, row by row, shovel by shovel. But peace doesn't come easy when you've seen how deep people can dig to steal what's yours. The story had spread across the county like wildfire. Everyone had seen the videos, Karen screaming in the mud, her sister getting cuffed in a courtroom hallway. News outlets called it the HOA hoax of Cedar Creek. Reporters wanted interviews. Neighbors brought pies. And even the sheriff stopped by one evening just to shake my hand. "You made a fool out of half the county's most arrogant duo," he said, laughing. But beneath the small-town celebration, I felt something heavier, as a reminder that standing up for your rights isn't just about land. It's about dignity. About teaching people like, Karen, that power doesn't come from fake rules or loud voices. It comes from truth that doesn't bend. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the hills, I took Emma for a walk down the fence line. She was holding Scout's leash, swinging it gently as we passed the mud pit, now just a shallow puddle. "Dad," she said quietly, "did you forgive them?" Her question stopped me. I looked down at her, then at the land stretched out before us, golden, peaceful hours. "Forgiving doesn't mean forgetting, sweetheart," I said slowly. "But yeah, I forgive them, because holding hate doesn't grow crops." She smiled, that innocent smile that makes everything else fade. "You're a good guy, Dad." I laughed softly. "Nah, I'm just a man who loves his land." We kept walking, and for a long moment it felt like the world was right again. Until halfway down the fence I noticed something. A new marker, a small wooden stake driven into the dirt painted red at the tip. It hadn't been there yesterday. I crouched down, brushing away the dust. On the side, faintly carved, were the letters LP. My heart sank, but I didn't move. Just stared at it, feeling the cool wind shift. Somewhere in the distance, a car door slammed, a sound too familiar to ignore. Emma tugged my sleeve. "Dad, what's wrong?" I stood up slowly, my eyes still on that red stake. "Nothing, sweetheart," I said, forcing a calm I didn't feel. "Let's head home." But as we walked back toward the porch, I glanced once more at that marker glinting in the dusk. Because even after the arrests, the videos, and the justice, something told me this war over my land wasn't finished yet. And this time whoever was behind it wasn't just after my crops. They were after everything. The next few days felt strange, too calm, almost rehearsed. The county office called to finalize boundary restoration. Reporters stopped showing up, and even the neighbors went back to their routines. But deep down, I could feel something was off. That red stake by the fence haunted me. Every time I looked out the window, it felt like it had crept a little closer to the house. On Friday morning, I finally decided to check. I grabbed my tape measure and shovel and walked the line from my barn to the far west corner. The soil there looked recently disturbed. Too fresh for how long it should have settled after the storm. I knelt down and pushed the shovel in. The blade hit something hard in a small rusted metal box. When I opened it, there were papers inside, laminated maps stamped and signed. But not by me. At the top, in bold letters, it said, "Land Acquisition Proposal, Cedar Creek Expansion Project," and right beneath that, "Authorized by Deputy Director, Infrastructure Division, Robert Parks." I froze. Another Parks. So it wasn't just Karen or Linda. There was a third one, the brother, a county developer with real government ties. Suddenly everything clicked. Karen wasn't crazy. She was bait. Linda used her position to shift records. And Robert? He was the one quietly trying to seize farmland for a commercial project. My land. The next hour felt like a blur. I scanned, photographed, and backed up every document. My pulse thudded in my ears. By noon, I was sitting in my truck again. This time not headed to the county office, but to the Federal District Bureau 2 towns over. Inside, I found my old supervisor, Harold Decker, the same man whose signature sealed my land years ago. "Mark Collins," he said, standing up in surprise. "I heard about that HOA fiasco. You stirred quite the storm." I dropped the file on his desk. "Storm's not over," I said. "You need to see this." He flipped through the papers, his brow tightening. "Good God. These are internal acquisition drafts. How did you get these? They were buried on my land. He sat back, rubbing his chin. Robert Parks has been pushing this Cedar Creek expansion plan for months. He wants to turn the entire ridge into a private housing estate. Looks like your property was step one. I leaned forward, voice low. I need legal lockdown on that boundary. Federal override. I want every foot of my land frozen from acquisition. Decker nodded slowly. I can make that happen. But Mark, he looked me dead in the eye. If this goes public, it's not just going to ruin Parks's career. It could pull half the county's zoning board down with him. I stared out his window for a long moment, watching the rain slide down the glass. Then let it fall, I said, because I'm done watching people in power steal from the ones who earned it. By the time I drove back home, dusk had set in. Emma was waiting on the porch again, Scout beside her. You were gone all day, she said softly. Had to make sure no one moves our fence ever again, I told her. She tilted her head. Is it safe now? I looked at the horizon, at that red stake, glowing faintly in the fading light, and nodded. It will be, I said quietly. But something tells me they're not done trying. Because in towns like ours, corruption doesn't die easy. It just hides, waiting for the right night to come digging again. That night, the wind came hard from the west, bending the corn low like it was whispering a warning. I couldn't sleep. Something about that red stake still burned in my mind. Around midnight, Scout started barking, with sharp, restless barks that cut through the dark. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped onto the porch. The beam cut across the field, glinting off something metal near the fence. Two silhouettes, moving fast. One held a clipboard, the other a flashlight. They weren't kids. They were professionals. I stepped off the porch quietly and made my way closer, boots sinking in the wet soil. When I got close enough to hear, one of them said, "He won't even notice. We just shift the marker another 10 feet before morning." That was all I needed to hear. I flicked on my own light, voice sharp as thunder. "You boys lost?" They froze. One turned slowly, a man in a county jacket with "Property Surveyor" printed on the back. The other tried to hide his face, but I recognized him instantly. Robert Parks. He straightened, forcing a grin. "Evening, Mr. Collins, just a routine inspection." "Routine inspection at midnight?" I cut in. "You've got a shovel, a forged permit, and a very bad family name." He sighed, stepping forward. "You don't understand, Mark. This isn't personal. The county needs this land for the expansion. You can't stop progress." I stared at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You're right," I said. "I can't stop progress. But I can stop you." From behind me, bright lights flashed. 2 federal SUVs rolled up the dirt road, tires splashing through mud. Decker stepped out first, his coat flapping in the wind. "Evening, gentlemen," he called out. "Funny time for a boundary inspection, isn't it?" Robert's face went pale. "You set me up," he said quietly. Decker shrugged. "You set yourself up when you accessed federal property data after hours. We traced the signal back to this field. Within seconds, the agents surrounded them." The younger man dropped his clipboard and raised his hands. Robert just stared at me, shaking his head in disbelief. "You could have joined me, Mark. You could have made a fortune." I took a step closer, voice steady but cold. "I already have what money can't buy and land that's mine, and no one steals that from me." As they hauled him toward the SUVs, lightning flashed across the sky, lighting up the field, the same muddy ground that started it all. I stood there for a moment, rain soaking through my shirt, watching the headlights fade away down the road. By morning, the storm had passed. The air smelled clean again, fresh. Emma ran out of the house barefoot, laughing as Scout chased her through the wet grass. I looked at the horizon and the fences straight, the crops alive, the land finally free. When she waved at me, her little hand covered in mud, I smiled. "Are you okay, Dad?" she shouted. "Better than ever," I called back. I took one last look at the soil, at the place where greed, lies, and power had all tried to bury me, and I whispered the same words I'd told her before. Only now they felt heavier, stronger, true. I didn't fight for this country to let anyone draw lines through my freedom. And as the morning sun rose over my land, I knew this time, it really was mine for good.